Hello everyone, welcome to Rainmakers Roundup. I'm your host Mark Iorio, and today I have with me, he's gonna look familiar to a lot of you because he was on Team Talk not too long ago. What's up?
That's right, how's it going?
Robb Hoyle, CEO of GTS Scientific. Good to have you.
Good to be here, Mark.
Good to see you, Robb. Last time you were on Team Talk, we talked more about the culture of business, but with Rainmakers, Robb, what I'd like to try to do is talk to people about, you're in a competitive business. GTS is in a competitive business, right? You're in life sciences, executive search, but you do things differently. GTS is a different organization, and you started it like 9 years ago. Tell us about it.
Sure. Yeah, so we're a life science engineering executive search firm. We do work across the country. We've done work in 30 plus states now, in mostly pharma, biotech, med device. So these companies are they're making life-saving drug and technologies for, whether it's rare disease or cancer or even COVID therapeutics. Yep. And, we've got 150 clients that we are working with now. Wow. And everything from, kind of your management director level staff members on up into the executive and C-suite space. Yeah. So in life sciences, for sure, the landscape is extremely competitive. It's extremely, the war for talent is a real thing in that space. And we get even more niche with cell and gene therapy, which is, a niche inside of life science. Sure. So that gets even more competitive because it hasn't been around for that long. It's a, cutting edge new technology. So, things get for sure competitive in that world.
What do you think makes GTS so unique in the way you go out and not only search for talent, but have clients that need talent that you're finding?
Yeah, so for us it's about, when I started the company, I thought, hey, there's a better way to do this. I had always been in recruiting, and for me it was about relationships and really positioning ourselves in the market. And when we first started, there was no GTS, right? We didn't have a name for ourselves. Nobody knew who we were, right, except for some of the the connections that I had built over my career. One of the things that we really try and focus on is that relationship piece, not just with the client, but also with the candidate base. Sure. The scientists and engineers who are going to possibly be working for some of our clients. And one of the things that we really focus on is being able to truly partner with our clients. So, anybody can say, hey, I'm a recruiter and I'm going to work on these jobs for you, right? Mm-hmm. Well, that's not really enough for us to pitch a client's job to an executive who may possibly be the perfect fit for it. We need to know them intimately. We need to partner with them inside and out. We need to know everything from a cultural standpoint on through to what the possible equity options would be in the package that we're going to present to the candidate. Sure. Right? So we need to understand all of that very intimately with our partner or client, but then we also need to understand what will work for the candidate. And marrying those two things together is extremely important because just because this executive may be the perfect fit for the client doesn't mean that job is the perfect fit for the executive. Right. Yeah. It's all got to match.
Yeah. Do you have a formula that you use when you say partner? A lot of people are probably looking at this and saying, everybody says partnership. Partnerships make, business kind of tick, and relationships make businesses tick. What are you doing at GTS that's really getting you to dive deeply into an organization to learn more about culture and understand, what they're looking for, so that when you do in fact find a candidate, it's like almost immediate that that person's going to fit.
Sure. So we're talking to them obviously about the technical skills that the candidate will need, but we're also learning the entire organization, right? Mm-hmm. And I mean, in life sciences, right, a lot of what goes on is funding and what stage you're at as a company. So just really understanding what stage that company is at, but then also diving into who's on their leadership team, right? Who's on their scientific advisory board? Who is also understanding who the right candidate is for the organization, right? Yeah. Talking with members of the team kind of, intimately, not just about, hey, they need these laboratory skills or have this scientific background, right, but really getting the ins and outs of what the team is looking for and what the culture is all about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the more you know, the more GTS knows about what's going on in the organization, the better suited you're going to be to go out and find the right candidates. Take us back, right? Take us back before you started GTS nine plus years ago, or right around 9 years ago. What were the things that you saw back then that said to you, I'm going to start an organization and I'm going to do things differently. I'm going to do things my way. What were the things that you were seeing out there in the marketplace and your experience level that made you want to just craft an organization like GTS?
Yeah, so there were a bunch of different reasons why I wanted to start my own company. And, you know, a few of the main reasons, the one obvious one was that I thought that I could do things a little differently and in a better way,
Right.
you know, focused on quality and improving. But for me personally, it was, you know, I had a good career at the time. I just wasn't leading a team, right? And I wasn't doing much business development. I was more managing a national recruiting load, right? So I would fill positions and you know, was having a nice career, but it just wasn't that challenging for me at the time. And I wasn't leading a team. So I felt that there was something missing there. And I also felt that I could, if I was going to go start a company, it should be in recruiting because it's what I knew, right? So that's kind of why I went and did what I did. What was interesting was I had came from like a temporary staffing background, and I thought that I was going to do that right away.
Oh, yeah.
And within 2 months of having to payroll people and, you know, figure out actually what goes on behind the scenes in that world, I quickly pivoted to the contingent search space, and then along the way, you know, we got into the executive and retained search.
Right.
So it's evolved for sure.
What's the difference? So tell the audience, you know, you got temporary placement, then you've got a retained search. You know, talk about the differences there.
Sure. So temporary and contract workers are, you know, essentially when a company will W-2 employees, and there could be a lot of reasons for that. It could be, you know, the client's looking for a seasonal employee, or they don't have the internal budget to hire a full-time employee, or you know, maybe they're, you know, building a manufacturing facility and it's only going to be a 1 or 2 year project, and they don't necessarily want to bring them on as headcount.
Got it. Okay.
Right. So those are the reasons why you would hire a temporary or a contract employee, and then you get into you know, the contingent search, which is essentially you know, you may be competing against a couple other contingent search firms, and it's not really exclusive, and you get paid when you place the candidate.
Got it.
And then you move into the retained executive search world, where it is an exclusive type of engagement. It's where you truly get to partner with your clients because they're invested in you and your success, and it's not just a competition between you and, you know, maybe an internal recruiter or another agency or anything like that.
Yep.
But the level of relationship that goes on in the executive retained world, and the fact that you need to, as a company, have a reputation behind yourself to, one, even land those searches, but also you need to know who the executives are in this industry in order to get a hold of them, to talk with them about it, right?
Yeah.
They're not applying to your jobs. It's a very different type of search. You have to go about it with a different strategy.
Yeah, that's a good point. So back when you started GTS, you know, you don't have that reputation, as you said. No one really knew the brand. No, fast forward, 9 years later, you've got a number of employees. You have 12 employees, right?
Right.
So your business development efforts are a whole lot different than they were when you started this organization 9 years ago. What was that like? Take us through that process. You know, you're knocking on doors 9 years ago. You're like, does anybody know Robb Hoyle?
Yeah.
To now, you've got a reputation out there.
Yeah, it really has come a long way, and you know, the way that I would describe what we're doing now is more relationship-based sales versus the kind of entry-level cold calling, cold emailing, saying, "Hey, I'm
Sure.
Robb Hoyle, I want to work with you."
Right.
Right. And you know what we've really focused on. So not only did we focus on making a niche for ourselves in the life science market, and that was really 6 years ago. I went into a conference, and I actually saw Dr. Carl June in Philadelphia.
Yep.
And he was telling the Emily Whitehead story, and they basically cured cancer in that situation, right? And that is a story where, you know, if you watch that, it brings tears to your eyes.
Oh,
you know,
God,
just
Yep.
watching that incredible story of the work that they did. And before all of that, we were more of a, yes, we were in life sciences, but we did some traditional manufacturing and more engineering work and those types of things. And from that day on, I said, hey, we're going to focus on life sciences for all of our outbound efforts.
Wow.
And even more specific to that, we've really been focused in that cell and gene therapy space. So when you're kind of keyed in on a market like that, it's easier to build a reputation because it's all you're doing. And it's where all of your focus is. And so what we did from there, and this is where I think the relationship piece is really important, right? You go from cold calling on companies that nobody knows, cold emailing, all of these things, to current state. When I try to get in companies now, it's much, much different. I will reach out to my network of 20 or 30 trusted advisors, people that I network with, right? And I will make introductions for them, and they'll make introductions for me anytime we're trying to get into a company. So it's a more concerted effort, and it's built off the fact that they know that if they introduce me to somebody, I'm not going to let them down.
Exactly.
They can trust me with their network.
Yep.
And that's the way I feel about my contacts as well.
Right.
So part of my time is spent just doing introductions for people, and you pay it forward and it comes back. But making that name for ourselves in the market that we're in has been critical, I think, for us to be able to build that value that our clients, our partners will eventually see.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, I was talking to a fellow yesterday, I guess it was, and he's one of, this guy is a business consultant guru, right? Well known. If I mention his name, everybody would know who
Sure.
he is. And we were talking on a Zoom call, and the one thing he said to me was those bridge relationships that you were talking about, those trusted advisors that you have, are invaluable.
Incredibly invaluable.
Right?
Yeah.
They're invaluable because GTS going directly into a biopharm company or a healthcare organization, a lot different than someone saying, hey, Rob, you need to meet my friend who is the head of HR at XYZ company.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and just to build on that point as well, right? There's one thing about getting in the door with a client, but there's another thing about candidates and companies thinking about GTS because they did a good job for us in the past.
Yep.
And that's where, my recruiting team, we train them to build relationships with these candidates. There's specific examples of where, we worked with a candidate and they didn't necessarily get the job. They were a great candidate. There wasn't a reason why they didn't get that position.
Yep.
But we stayed in touch with them. And then what happens is they go and land in a new role, and all of a sudden they're a hiring manager, and they realize, hey, Parker over here at GTS did a great job for me, even though I didn't get that role. Now I'm going to call Parker because I'm here in this new position. I need to hire people.
Yeah.
So it's building that name and treating people the way they should be treated, whether or not it's successful or not.
Yeah, and it happens sometimes. It happens in the long run. We're gonna have to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll talk to Rob more about, say, a case study, something he's really proud of, something that you think back, Rob, and say, man, that was a great placement, and the client's happy, and the candidate's happy. We'll be right back after a message from our sponsors. Don't go away.
Plan your New Jersey trip at visitnj.org. Waves of fun. Nights of excitement. And a trail of memories. Now that's New Jersey.
This plus this equals this plus this and this. Don't drink and drive.
Welcome back to Rainmakers Roundup. I'm your host, Mark Iorio, and I'm with Robb Hoyle. Robb is the CEO of GTS Scientific. Another great conversation, thanks. So Robb, when you look at, over the last 9 years with GTS, you're working with 150 clients, right? That's a lot of clients and a lot of placements over that 9-year period. There have to be some that really stand out, that you sit back and you say, man, I'm so proud of that, you know.
Sure.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, you know, the interesting thing about being in recruiting is that there is this scenario where you're changing people's lives.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
you know, when it works right, it's the fact that it is a better opportunity for this person, right? And
Yeah.
and a lot of times it's also with the great reason why we focus on life sciences is it's companies that are doing great work in general, right? And they're coming up with cures for cancer or whatever it may be, right?
Yeah.
But some of the stories that stick out to me, you know, I think my best story is we offered an entry-level girl a job, and we actually barely ever even do entry-level these days because clients, you know, they're not that interested in us doing entry-level work for them.
Right.
But this girl had graduated with a biology degree, was the first person in her family to graduate from college. Underprivileged neighborhood, you know, the family didn't have a lot of money. And we got her the job, and the day that I called and offered her the position, she actually cried on the phone with me. She was crying because this was a life-changing moment for her.
Wow.
You know, to have gone to college and you know, saw the possible opportunity that she could have for herself. And you know, it was just the level of difficulty for the role was not a big deal, right? It's just, hey, find a biology major. But the fact that this changed this girl's life was just amazing. It's an amazing story, I think. And, you know, there's obviously other stories in general, but that one always sticks.
Yeah, it always. Do you stay in touch with? Obviously, you stay in touch with some of the candidates that you place. You stay in touch with, obviously, with the clients, but also the candidates. And are you placing them multiple times over their career, right?
Yeah. It's interesting because I've got some examples of candidates that I worked with way back in, you know, like 2005 or 6, and I had just stayed in touch with them through, you know, just emails and calls and whatever and lunch meetings, and then eventually I ended up placing someone who I knew for 8 years.
Wow.
And then 12 years later, he became a hiring manager.
Wow.
And then he went, you know, 15 years into the relationship, he went to another company.
Wow.
So it's, you know, it's interesting to, you know, each one of our accounts and each one of our placements, we can link back to something. You know, obviously we're funneling people into our database all the time, right?
Yep.
But, you know, people that we think are good, and I don't mean good as in like they're going to make us money. I mean good as in like people that have done quality work and we can build relationships with. Those are the folks we want to stay in touch with.
Yeah, for sure. You know, you touched on a little bit of this earlier, but I really want to get down to the sort of the crux of what you had mentioned. You had mentioned that you went to this conference with Dr. Carl June, and it basically changed your life in a sense.
It changed my focus
Changed
for
your
sure,
focus.
and it allowed it. You know, I'm more mission driven now, and it's really easy to get passionate about that.
Yeah.
And it allows us to align where we want to go.
Yeah.
Pretty easily.
Yeah. Yeah, so talk about the passion for doing what you do. Why do you get up in the morning? And why, you know, when you think about, there's a couple things, obviously. You know, when you were a one-person GTS Scientific, and it was Robb Hoyle as the founder, you know, it was different, right? You had yourself and your family to worry about. Now you've got yourself and 12 people to worry about.
Right.
And their families.
Yes.
But the passion that you have hasn't wavered. Talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, the passion hasn't wavered at all. You know, in terms of what makes me tick, right? When I started out from day one, I wanted to have a team and I wanted to lead an organization, and I always had that vision to do that, right?
Yep.
And the things that have changed, you know, before when I started the company, it was, hey, I've got to make enough money to, you know, pay the mortgage and feed the family and all of those things. And then as you go, you hire one person, then 4, then now, you know, 12. That responsibility gets even greater, right? The payroll goes up. You need to bring the opportunity in, you know, make sure the team is fed. And that's professionally what drives me, right? I mean, personally what drives me is making sure I'm taking care of my family and changing the family tree, so to speak, and, you know, the things that they can do in the future. So that's, you know, number one for me personally, right, is to make sure that that's taken care of. But for the team, I have to make sure that I can get them not only to the next level of their career, but so that they're making an impact for themselves and what they want to do. And to me, that's what it's all about, right? It's all about, I can't be successful if they're not successful. So even if I was a selfish person, I wanted to be really, really successful, well, I've got to make sure that the team's doing very well. And for me, I try and do everything I can to make sure that they're getting the training and development that they need. But the more we grow, the better, the more opportunities we can create. At least that's the way the equation's supposed to work,
exactly,
right? But the responsibility is on me to make sure that I'm driving the business in the right direction so that that opportunity is there for the team.
What would you do differently if you were sitting next to a Robb Hoyle that was maybe 8 or 10, 12 years younger, and giving that person advice as to what to look for? You know what's cool about this, Rob? A lot of times when you are a CEO of an organization and you're able to see around the corner, right, you prevent things from happening. But I'm sure we all did. I've been an entrepreneur for 34 years. You make mistakes.
For sure.
You know?
Yeah, so if I was looking back at my earlier career, even before I started GTS, it would have been there are certain things that you don't learn until you've grown up in business and gained insight in and made those mistakes on your own. But it certainly would be, don't be afraid to fail. Yeah, we've got to learn a lot of lessons in order to grow. Don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid to take risks. Would be a huge one for me because, to be honest with you, I wouldn't be here today if I was afraid to take risks. Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Some people are so afraid of it that they can't move forward in life. And the other big thing would be to get as many mentors as you can. Go out to people who are doing things that you want to do or you think you want to do, and talk with them about their careers and build relationships with them. The thing that people don't understand when they're in their 20s or whatever is that the older folks who are successsul enjoy giving back to the younger crowd.
Oh yeah,
right.
Definitely.
I love talking to people about their careers and mentoring them.
Yeah.
I would have done more of that at a younger age if I could have. And there's some things you just don't know when you're young in your career.
Yeah.
But also to just make sure that you maintain relationships and don't treat them as a transaction. When you meet people, if they're someone who is a good person who's open to talking with you and learning from them, then you should really try and build that relationship.
Yeah, there have been a couple times over the last year or so with interviews on Rainmakers where people have come on and they're guys that we know, that are in our network, right? That give back. They're giving without expecting anything back, right? Any expectations. And it seems like you're that kind of guy. You're giving, and like you said, I mean, you've got candidates who are in the pool that you've known for years. It may not get anything out of them for 7, 8, 9, 10 years, and all of a sudden, because you have that reputation, they're going to come back and work with you.
Yeah, and I think that's key, right? If you're looking to gain something out of a relationship, that's not the way it works.
Yeah.
You should be open to sharing what you can share with people where it makes sense with your network, right? If you know people well and the introduction makes sense, you should be willing to do that. You should be willing to, give your time and help people out. And, also it's good advice to find a cause, right? So not only do we do the recruiting work that we do, but we support a lot of philanthropic organizations around those causes. Like for me personally, it's ALS and cancer initiatives.
Yeah.
That's where I focus my time.
Yeah.
And for the rest of my team, they have different initiatives that they're interested in.
Yeah.
And we support that however we can.
That's awesome. Speaking of that, where do you find inspiration? Where's the inspiration in Robb Hoyle's life come from?
I think a lot of it comes from, my family and the way that I grew up. It was always kind of, hey, like my parents moved us out of Philadelphia to the suburbs, right? And this was the great move for the family, and it was a great move, right?
Yeah,
So I always look back at that, and I see how hard my parents worked while we were growing up, right? My dad had 2 or 3 jobs. My mom worked her way through college, while raising us, and then moved into the workforce. So I always saw them working hard, and they always kind of made me work hard. Like I had a paper route at 13, which you don't see a lot of kids doing anymore, right? I shoveled snow when the snow came down. So I always kind of had that. And I always knew that I had the, not so much the talent or the ability, but I always had the drive. So where it comes from, that's the only place that I can say that it comes from, and I just know that that's what I have to do.
And you've got family working with you too, right, at GTS?
Yeah,
Pretty cool.
Greg came on 3 years ago. A lot of people warned me about doing the family business, and
It's your brother.
It's my brother.
Yeah.
So Greg's our COO now, and to be honest with you, it's the best move that we've made as a company because it allowed for him to manage the team and do things that he's really good at, which I'm not necessarily great at.
Yep.
But it also allowed me to go out and do more business development and focus on vision and strategy for the company and things like that. So It's been really great.
That's great.
Yeah.
Rob, it's been a pleasure. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
It's great to be here.
Tell everyone how to get in touch with GTS, please.
Yes, you can find me on LinkedIn, Robb Hoyle. GTScareers.com is our website. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at GTS Scientific.
And you're still doing the podcast, right?
Still doing the podcast, yeah, Talent Talks. We do that. We launch an episode every Friday.
Yep, great. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
You're welcome. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is a wrap for Rainmakers Roundup. Look up Robb Hoyle, please. If you're in the life sciences business, look up Robb Hoyle and GTS Scientific. You will not be disappointed, I promise you. Have a great week, everyone. We'll see you next time on Rainmakers Roundup.